Hey, what's going on? This is the Convo. I'm Norm, along with Mike. It is Sunday, March 12th, 2023. Your Maple Leafs coming off a 7-4 victory over the Oilers at Scotiabank Arena. That was a fun game, Mr. A, especially that second period when the Leafs exploded for 4 goals. That's the kind of team we like to see, especially when it's bursting at the seams offensively. A lot of pushback last night too. And Mike, before we went on into this podcast, you mentioned that the final 18 games of the season to you were kind of like a warm-up season leading into the playoffs. So of the 18 games, one is down and the Leafs are 1-0. Good morning.
Good morning, Norm. Yeah, I mean, I look at the remaining 5 weeks of the regular season, and I look at where the standings are, and obviously the Leafs want to keep winning and they want home ice advantage in the first round, but they know who they're playing against. They know it's either the only thing up in the air is going to start at Scotiabank Arena or Amalie Arena on April 16th or 17th, and other than that, it's like, okay, let's experiment with some line combos and let's try some different defensive pairings and see, let's rotate the goaltenders, not overwork them, and let's just see what's going on. And we'll look at each one of those groups and what Sheldon Keefe might be doing. But I mean, last night, and I had pegged this game potentially as, like one of the best games potentially of the year to be at. And I was supposed to cover that game, but something.
You may have been right, Mike.
Yeah, and I mean, Connor McDavid is going to win the Hart Trophy. The Edmonton Oilers was clearly apparent last week or first of the month when they played in Edmonton. The Oilers have a bug up their rear end for the Leafs, like most of the other Canadian franchises, and they opened up a can of whoop ass on them in Edmonton. And halfway through the game, it looked like the Leafs were sort of like interested in a slumber. And then a phenomenal play by Mitch Marner, I think, really enthused this team. And, like you said in the preamble, there was some pushback and there was some sandpaper that I think contributes to that. But it was an unbelievable individual effort by Marner to make the game 3-2. And once that happened, the floodgates were open, and you can see the flaws of the Oilers in terms of their, they have two of the best players in the NHL, but defensively they're still inept. They signed a goaltender for $25 million for 5 years. And in 2 games against his former team, they're afraid to put him on the ice. And he's got a save percentage that would make Peter Mrazek blush. So, they're a flawed team, but it was a very entertaining game. And I think anybody who's a Leaf fan has to have a little bit of hatred for the Oilers just because, they get the great players so many times, and it really isn't deserving.
Benny B, the crowd was engaged last night. Very exciting. Certainly so, Mr. B. And Norm, along with Mike. This is the Convo. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. Like the Leafs, the Oilers are flawed. And when you break them down position by position and in terms of the composition of the team, there still leaves something to be desired, like the Maple Leafs. The difference is the Oilers were able to crack the first round and get into a conference final last year. I don't know if it necessarily says a lot about the trajectory of these teams and where they're headed, because we did see last night some real leafy responses from the Oilers. The good thing is it was the Maple Leafs who were taking it to the Oil guys in the second period. And it's interesting, the genius Ken Holland is the one making decisions in the Alberta capital. So, you're not a golden boy forever, and you just have to deal with the big contracts you give out. That was pretty interesting that Jack Campbell didn't get the start. Obviously, implications there, and there may be some psychological issues. And, was that the right decision not to start him? I mean,
Well,
at least got the win. That's the key.
I mean, all I'll say is this. They've started Stuart Skinner in the game against Edmonton, and he played really well. So going back to Skinner made a lot of sense. But I questioned, why Campbell didn't get the start. And, Stuart Skinner is the number one. He's going to be the one who's going to play in the playoffs based on the way that they played in the regular season.
That's a lot of money sitting around.
Yeah. But right now, like, it's interesting that, and we'll have this debate in a second about, which one of the Leaf goaltenders will be the one that starts in the playoffs. And it might be the guy who's making less money in Toronto as well. But I'll just say this about the game overall. Yes, like somebody said on Twitter to me this morning, that 20-minute span of like mid-second period to early third when they scored 5 goals could be the best 20-minute span of the season, and that might be right. They were hitting on all 8 cylinders. Marner makes that fantastic play, individual effort to make it 3-2, and then he intercepts the pass, stick blocks it, and feeds Nylander for the tying goal, and then Matthews and Tavares combine on the go ahead goal, and then it was just on from there. They just were on.
Mike, do the Leafs are the Leafs capable of doing that against the team that is a little more responsible in the way it plays, right? Edmonton is very vulnerable. They score, and then the cracks start to show in the armor, and then you're able to respond. And the Leafs were very responsive. But can the Leafs do that to a team like Boston?
I'm not sure about Boston because I don't think anybody can do it against Boston, but they're capable of doing it. They've done
it. Tampa, that's another question.
Yeah, well, Tampa, true. They're capable in stretches of doing it, and they've done it in the past. I mean, we've looked at what they did against Columbus in the playoffs, so what they did against Montreal, coming back twice against big deficits in Game 5 and Game 6, that they couldn't finish it. And so, it's an unknown that we won't know until the postseason. But the concerning thing for me from that game was, and there's a lengthy tendency with this team this year where they score a goal, a key goal, even the opening goal, and will give up the response goal within a minute, within a few seconds sometimes. And it just shows a sort of a lack of focus. And, I don't know what has to be drilled into their skulls by Sheldon Keefe, or that's something that he has been drilling and they just don't listen. But it's something that in a playoff scenario where momentum and emotion are really important, you score a big goal at some point in the game and then you give up the lead, or, it's a tying goal and you fall behind again. Those are things that are crushing in a playoff scenario. So that's something that has to be eliminated from their game.
Can Sheldon Keefe tactically, to mitigate any disaster following a goal, put the right crew out on the ice?
I don't think it's a function of the right crew. It seems to happen no matter who is out there. So, last night, and it's funny because I believe for every goal for or against on Tuesday, the pairing of Giordano and Hall were out there. For the first 3 goals, the opening goal by Achari, and then the 2 goals by the 2 Edmonton goals in the first period, it was Giordano and Hall. And of course, I make my usual point when Justin Hall is responsible for a goal, that he's responsible for the goal, and everybody
says, how much of that was on Giordano?
Well, no, it was okay on the second goal. We're talking about the Evander Kane goal midway through the first period. It was a 2-on-2 break. Kane goes wide right around Hall. He has more speed. He beats Hall to the edge to go around the net to do the wraparound. And everybody, when I say, ladies and gentlemen, Justin Hall strikes again, they're like, well, Matt Murray's got to get the wraparound. Well, no. How about the defenseman? How about the defenseman who is got a forward barreling in on him? He doesn't force him wide. He loses the speed battle, and then he allows the defenseman to wrap around. There was a picture last night of where Hall was when Kane was doing the wraparound, and Hall was behind the net, and Kane was wrapping the puck into the goal. So
fans described Hall as a pylon, and that was an example of him being a pylon, Mike. And
he's not
like
Yeah.
I feel bad for the guy in a lot of ways that he just constantly gets exposed and he doesn't seem to develop even when given this opportunity to develop. I mean, his brother or his spiritual advisor or the guy who's connected heart to heart with them, Sheldon Keefe, you know, has to make a decision here. Are you going to continually put this guy in a position where he's making a fool of himself, not helping the team? Or are you going to back him off and shelter his minutes and make him kind of the last guy you're going to go to? It seems to be all or nothing with Justin Hall right now, and it's I don't know why it continues to be all. They've got guys who can replace him, and you've seen last night he's just not ready for prime time, and prime time's a coming, Mr. A.
Well, he was on the ice for all three New Jersey goals on Tuesday, and he was on the ice for three of the four Edmonton goals.
Right.
Now, like somebody in the chat just said, he was +1. So, in a
He could be standing around and be +1, Mike. We
yeah,
know that.
in a playoff scenario, you try to eliminate what I refer to as the double-edged sword, the guy
Mhm.
who is a positive at one end but a negative on the other. Now, moving into the goaltending thing, and again, there were a lot of people last night that were just like absolutely destroying Matt Murray for the goals early in the game. Now, I didn't think the Ekholm goal was particularly strong. Like I said, I think the Kane wraparound goal
Right.
was more on Hall than him. McDavid is McDavid. McDavid can make anybody look bad, so I'm not going to, fault him for that. After that, when the Leafs made their run and they're up 5-3 and 6-3, Murray settled down. Now this is his second game since missing 6 weeks
Right.
with an ankle injury. I think, again, one of the things that's going to be sorted out over the next 5 weeks is, who's going to be starting game one in the playoffs.
And can I say, Mike, neither Samsonov nor Murray are peak carry price, right? You're going to have to take the highs and the lows with these cats. They're going to get into a groove, and they may give up a couple of shitty goals, which you can pin mostly on them, or at times fault the support system for not being there to facilitate a save, Mike. So we have to get that in our minds. Neither one of these guys really is a Vezina trophy winning Conn Smythe kind of guy at this stage. So unless it's a surprise, and we'll take it, but I doubt it.
No, and I agree with what you just said, but and that is the reason why I believe that unlike the last 6 years, they're not going to go with one goalie.
Right,
It's not going to be game one through game seven,
right.
Murray or Samsonov. I think, they could use Murray on the road because he's the more veteran experienced guy, and use Samsonov at home where he's 17-2-1. It's very possible that they do that. Now, what they're doing in the remaining 17 games of the season might be in preparation for that, because if they continue to rotate them, if they continue to, okay, so Samsonov played against New Jersey, Murray plays against Edmonton. The next game is against Buffalo on Monday. I would expect Samsonov to start, and then back and forth and back and forth. And this 4-game homestand, I think they have a day off in between every game. So you're giving your goaltenders 3 or 4 days off in between starts because you're rotating the goalies, and I think that's a smart thing to do.
This is the Convo, Norm, along with Mike. Thanks so much for all of your support. The podcast edition of this content will be up here in the next little while. You can listen to us on the podcast platform of your choice. Bitch Marner, is something wrong with Matt Murray? Well, yeah. I mean, he's just not in a groove. It's been 2 games since the lengthy time off, convalescing, and overcoming an injury. So yeah, certainly there is something wrong with the guy. He's not at peak at this point. The thing about Matt Murray is I don't know if we'll ever see him at peak over a extended period of time where he's holding everything down, because there's another guy on the ice who needs to get some ice time and who's just as capable. And again, Mike, you made the point. This is going to be a tandem right through to the end. And anyone who doesn't think it's going to be, tell us why. And if one of these guys again catches lightning in a bottle and the head coach feels comfortable just leaving him out there
Mhm.
with the other dude as support on the bench, well, he's just going to have to roll the dice on that one. But the way these two guys are playing, where they're coming from, where they are in their careers, what they're capable of, and what we've seen so far screams a tandem. And there's nothing wrong with that. A couple more points, Mike, on the goaltending, and then we'll just push along here. I wanted to throw a shout out at Mr. John Tavares too, man. 30 goals again, just
Mhm.
quietly going about his business.
Yeah, remarkable consistency, and I think the captain avoided what everybody was fearful of from last Saturday, where he took two big hits from Tyler Myers and former Leaf draft pick Dakota Joshua. He got rocked. He stayed in the game, and then they sat him out on Tuesday because they were going to have off until last night.
Right.
And he looked fantastic. So, that I think that assuages the fears of the potential of him having some post-concussion symptoms. So, I mean, that's, once they get O'Reilly back, which will probably be around the 1st of April, maybe a little later than that, then they'll have their full complement, knock on wood. But yeah, I mean, Tavares is, for all the criticism of Tavares, he's slowing down. He's this, he's that, he's making too much
It was
money.
an '09 draft.
Yeah,
'09.
he is, you want Toronto area guys who have talent like him to want to come to Toronto, and slamming on him for really no good reason, I think, discourages future players from wanting to come to Toronto. So, he's been great this year. I think it's sort of been an underreported story that he's been as good as he is. I mean, a lot of people have been focusing more on Austin Matthews and his struggles, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But just to finish off the goaltending, I mean, again, if they win home ice advantage, I would think that they start with Samsonov because of his record at home. But that's to be determined based on how Murray plays every other game down the stretch. If Murray starts to find it where he was after he came back from the first injury in November, where remember that game in New Jersey where he was just superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're going to go with the experience and the guy who's won 2 Stanley Cups. But if they're sort of like around the same, then I think that they're going to play the percentages and go with Samsonov to start the series.
You have to be comfortable to play either. If it's shit, we got to put Murray into a game just to give Samsonov some time, or 5 goals in the first 10 minutes and Murray's got to come in. You have to be confident in either one of these guys. It's just I don't know if that confidence can last for game after game after game before something wanes and you have to off spell one with the other. And again, that's okay, Mike. The big push continues on. We've determined that Justin Hall is not. He's not ready for prime time, despite all of the chances he's had. It's going to be a platoon between the pipes. In terms of the forwards, Mike, what I liked about last night, and this was a contributor to the success, along with that big offensive second period spurned by Mitch Marner. But the pushback, Jake McCabe was having no bullshit. Michael Bunting, 6 penalty minutes. That guy was going at dudes. Noel Acciari was in there. Sam Lafferty was in there. Again, speaking of Acciari, 2 goals last night. Just, driving to the net, going headfirst into the boards, 0 fucks, right? And then he picks up an empty net or 2, which is really, really nice to see when somebody's laying his body on the line, already has a goal. He's more of a support guy, and then he can pick up an empty netter. Hey, he'll take those goals all day. So from a forward standpoint, Mike, Matthews scoring, Tavares looking good, Ryan O'Reilly, we're expecting him back with a few games to go in the regular season. I really can't say that we need too much more in terms of personnel from the forwards. We just need everybody to dial it up and, kerosene light a match, hair on fire. Let's go.
I think that Sheldon Keefe likes the look of. Remember they played 11 forwards last night, so it was sort of mix and match.
Right.
I don't think that when the playoffs start, Alex Kerfoot will be playing on the top line with Matthews and Marner. But you have to say though that Kerfoot and his defensive ability and his speed and his playmaking ability does contribute to that line in term. And they have played well with him on their wing. He's a good facilitator for all the criticism of everybody that has been there for Alex Kerfoot. I think, he is a good facilitator. He's a good plug in with talent.
Mike, real quick, just to pause. Can you take us back to the moment or series of moments that made Alex Kerfoot the whipping boy? One of the whipping boys on this team. What is it about this guy? Just because he doesn't seem to be a dick. He's a decent guy. I mean, nobody's really expecting him to be a major point producer. What is it about Alex Kerfoot that has rubbed everybody the wrong way?
The point that he was traded for Nazem Kadri and he signed a 4-year deal for $3.5 million. He's never been popular because of those things. Every time the Leafs run into cap problems, they point to Alex Kerfoot as the reason.
So he's the guy who takes he's the guy who takes the criticism. Really, none of it's his fault.
No, I think if he was making $1.5 million like David Camp, then nobody would be criticizing him, but because they'd say because he got $3.5 million, they signed him as a replacement second line or third line center for Kadri after Kadri had stabbed the Leafs in the back twice in 2 consecutive playoffs.
Him, Matt Sundin, Barry Bonds, just keep putting him in the bullshit.
Corey Cross, Anders Eriksson, keep going, blah blah, yada yada yada. No, but so did he fulfill the role that he was originally signed for? No, but has he been an effective and a contributing player? Yes, people will if he scores a big goal in the playoffs this year that gets the Leafs over against Tampa or against somebody else, and then he leaves via free agency, I think people will maybe have to reconsider the criticism of Alex Kerfoot. I think he's been an effective player. He's a good penalty killer. He's not a $3.5 million player, but he's versatile. And I think in a playoff scenario, he's going to be very valuable. And
remember when Mitch Marner was overpaid, and he still is, I guess, isn't he?
Yeah, and that's why at the deadline, Kyle Dubas got Minnesota to retain 25% on Ryan O'Reilly. This is reported by, I think it was Elliot Friedman, for the specific purpose of keeping Alex Kerfoot. So that may pay off down the line. But just as an overall with the forwards, I mean, they're going with 11 forwards because, O'Reilly's out right now. And if you went with 12 yesterday, I think it's more about they want to play more of the defensemen and get them looks and shifts. I don't think Alex Steeves is going to play in the playoffs. I don't think Wayne Simmons is going to play in the playoffs, but obviously Ryan O'Reilly will. And when that happens, I think you're going to see probably a third line of Lafferty, Yarncroke, and O'Reilly. In that, because Keith seems to really love, and I think that there's a reason to, that fourth line that's currently Achari, Aston Reese, and David Kampf. There's a lot of playoff experience there. There's a lot of sort of sandpaper and defensive ability. That's a fourth line that you can play 12, 13 minutes in a playoffs.
Mike, are you hearing yourself? Yeah. You sound encouraged by the Leafs for support forwards. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, you didn't give off that kind of enthusiasm, Mike, and your enthusiasm's always tempered. But this is exactly what we wanted to see from this team. More support down there and a fourth line that we're excited to watch come over the boards, and this could be it.
Yeah, now there might be changes. I particularly believe that you're going to probably see Bunting return to that top line with Matthews and Marner, that either Yarncroke or Kerfoot will be on the left wing on the second line with Tavares and Nylander. And then, then either, Yarncroke or will be with O'Reilly, and then you keep that fourth line the same. But the fourth line was very effective yesterday, and can play minutes. And that's, you can't go into a playoff series playing 9 forwards and playing a fourth line 6 minutes with guys like, Kyle Clifford or Wayne Simmons. If you have to put Wayne Simmons, and then if you put Wayne Simmons in there and play 4 minutes, then you're going with 11 forwards, and that's just not going to work.
Why are we? So this is the thing, Mike. Why are we bringing Wayne Simmons up with the glut of forwards that this team has right now and how interchangeable they are? Which, we talk about how we'd like to see the lines, but isn't it cool that you can take a guy from the fourth and put him on the first, or take a guy from the first, put him on the third, that they are interchangeable? Why are we talking about Wayne Simmons, Mike? I don't think the Leafs need him at this point. The Leafs have enough jam. Nobody's throwing fists, but that's not what we're asking for. We're just play with your hair on fire, play with physicality. Wayne Simmons, I mean, sign those papers, buddy.
Okay, I'll say this. Wayne Simmons is a popular player. He is a good teammate.
Right.
Right. And I don't see a problem having him as a 13th forward going down the stretch. And they can do that because Ryan O'Reilly's on LTIR. If they were up against the cap, then Simmons wouldn't be, he's never going to play a game for the Marlies. But his contract was sent to the AHL, so he's going to stay around this team, and he may get a game in here or there. Like when there's a game against a tough team, like if they play Boston again, I'm sure Wayne Simmons is going to be in the lineup, and I don't think he's going to be in. I don't think he's going to be in the game against Tampa. But it's possible. I mean, it's like this. Playing with 11 forwards. You're not going to play with 11, probably not going to play with 11-7, and we're going to talk about defense in a second. But if you play Simmons in a series against Tampa, and it's to sort of counteract what Patrick Maroon or Perry or Tanner Jeannot do in their lineup, that's a chess move, but that's playing 11 forwards now is sort of preparation for you playing with 11 forwards basically when you have Simmons in lineup, because you're going to spot him. You're going to play him 4 or 5 minutes. That's all he's going to be. And somebody was referencing it wasn't Tampa, Florida. It was Tampa, Vegas. And that is what you have to prepare for when it comes to the Lightning. You had one guy, Patrick Maroon, high stick, Keegan Colasar in the face, and it was on. It was 5 guys versus 5 guys. It was line brawl, and Vegas had big guys out there, and Tampa had all the guys that we just mentioned. And what did the referees do? They gave 10 game misconducts because it was essentially a line brawl, and that's the game that the depth forwards of the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to try to play. They're going to try to sewer you. They're going to try to rub. What Evander Kane and Darnell Nurse were doing last night against the Leaf players. Pushing them, prodding them. That's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to goad the Leafs into responses. And the Leafs were fairly disciplined yesterday, except for the rather funny shift between Evander Kane and Michael Bunting. Anybody who's a Leaf fan, if you don't love Michael Bunting, something is wrong with you, because
that's remarkable. Evander Kane's a monster, and Michael Bunting isn't. But Michael Bunting's got the heart of a lion, and he's ready for war. Sam Lafferty's ready for war. Nola Chari certainly ready to go. Jake McCabe is another one of those guys. Ryan O'Reilly will do what he has to, physically, but just be a tactical kind of player out there. I just don't know if the Leafs get into the trenches with Tampa, the Leafs can win that, other than somehow hold their own and then just counter with the speed and the skill and the ability that they have. So I understand what you're talking about. It's just, to take up a spot in the lineup on that night for 4 or 5 minutes from our friend Wayne Simmons, are those minutes not better served being played by a guy who can offer a little bit more than just kind of stand out there and say, I'm here? And again, I love Wayne Simmons, Mike.
But see and some of the people in the chat are probably right. When O'Reilly comes back, who are you sitting?
Right.
So they went with 11 forwards. Now, if you add O'Reilly to the group that you already have, then one of the defensemen is sitting down and transitioning to the defense. The whole purpose of them going with 7 right now is because they have 9 defensemen. Luke Schenn, somebody in the chat said his wife gave birth. I don't know. I didn't hear that, but it's very possible. She was, it was very. She was in her ninth
Well,
month.
then congrats to the Shens if that's the case.
Yeah, and that's where he should be, and the Leafs are very understanding about that. So that once she's given birth, and then he comes back to the team, he's going to be part of this mix. The only guy who doesn't seem to be part of the mix right now is Connor Timmins, and it's not based on anything that Connor Timmins has done wrong. It's like he's a part of this team, and they see him, especially next year, as a guy on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
Got him on a very economical deal. He's going to be one of the 3 righties, along with Liljegren and probably Brody, who's not a righty, but he plays the right side, which means Justin Hall's gone. But that's what he's there for. And he had a tough time recovering from injury at training camp, and came back and has played well in a limited role. But I think Keefe has basically said he's going to play a game here or there, but more than likely he's just going to be like building himself up for next year. So right now, so you have 8 defensemen, and you brought in Eric Gustafsson to be sort of that secondary power play quarterback, offensive defenseman. He's a mobile guy. Defensively, he's been questionable throughout his career, and that's why I don't think when it gets to the playoffs that Eric Gustafsson is going to be in the lineup. Now, if you're going 12-6, I find it hard to believe that you're going to trade for Luke Schenn and not play him. So either
is that even a scenario?
Well, if they go 12-6, then who are you sitting? Are you sitting Timothy? You can't be sitting Timothy Liljegren. I think he's one of your best 6 defensemen. Now that I know I'm a one-note Charlie when it comes to Justin Hall, but if you're talking about the best 6 defensemen, he's not one of them. He can't be in the lineup.
He plays like he's the ace of the staff, and that's
yeah. He's not Alec. He's not Alec Manoah. He's more like UC Kikuchi.
Mitch White.
No, he's more like Kikuchi.
Kikuchi looks great this spring, bud.
I'm talking about Kikuchi last year with his 5 ERA. But that's what I mean. It's like in a playoff scenario, especially against a team like Tampa, when you're expecting physicality, you have to have Schenn in the lineup. So I mean, that's why I think if they go with 12-6, which they should, because O'Reilly will be back, then you're probably going to have Schenn in there instead of Hall. If they don't, then that's something that and that's contributing factor to them losing. Then that's something that I think will eventually lead to Sheldon Keefe's demise. You can be loyal, but you have to play your best players, especially when your general manager goes out and trades assets.
Right. Exactly. Well, they've had to have had this conversation. Like there's. What is Keefe and Shanahan watching everybody except number 3?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can see it, and there are a number of people who also can see it, but either they don't seem to see it, or they tend to, or they choose to ignore it. And okay, Schenn has got to play some games. He's played 1, so. But and you could say, well, maybe he's not much of an upgrade over Hall. If anything, I think he brings physicality that Hall doesn't. So that's one aspect. And against his former team and against a bunch of players that he knows, he's going to have to step it up. Now, I'll say this, and nobody ever is rooting for players to get hurt. Never.
Here we go.
No, but Tampa over the last week has been dinged with 2 significant injuries.
3-4-3 in their past 10, Mike. And Leaf fans who watch our show and hate the fact that we laud this team because of all of the great things that it's done are reminding us that the Lightning are 3-4-3 in their past 10, and their time is up, Mike.
Yeah, they could be 0-10, and I wouldn't trust it. That's, whatever. But I mean, I think the thing that's a factor here is not that they're 3-4. They slumped at times last year. They slumped during the series against Toronto, and then they turned around and won.
Same people who say, hey, who gives a shit that the Leafs are slumping? Don't worry, they'll turn it on when it counts. And again, I'm not trying to cause a division, and I'm not trying to cry over spilt milk or bring up issues. I'm just saying, every team has its peaks and valleys. Just be careful, right? When you're running too hot, it may not be as good as you think it is, and when you're mired in just you spinning your wheels like that, you'll get out of it. And anybody who thinks that your number is about to be up, just be careful, because the Reaper is always lurking in that Tampa team. Until the Leafs can exercise those demons by eliminating the Lightning, we still have to give Tampa the benefit of the doubt. A few more comments, Mike, and we'll get out of here.
But Victor Hedman was hurt last week, and
right.
he played last night, played 24 minutes. But, if he's not 100%, if he's dinged a little bit, that will limit his effectiveness. Last night, Stamkos got entangled with former Leaf Joey Anderson, got up, and his knee was injured. John Cooper saying it's not serious, but anything that limits these players, anything that has them at less than 100% is good news for Toronto, because that's, if you don't have these guys at 100%, then, it gives you more of an advantage. Obviously, Ryan O'Reilly is not going to be at 100% when he comes back. It may affect, the healed broken finger may affect him doing faceoffs, but he's still going to be able to participate. So, I mean, but again, the Lightning and what they do the rest of the regular season, just like what the Leafs do, is absolutely freaking meaningless. It's when when the puck is dropped for game one, and who is ready at that point, and who plays their best over a 7-game series. And until the Leafs best a team that has won 2 Stanley Cups and finished in 3 Stanley Cup finals, I'm a doubting Thomas. I'll wait to see what they do.
Glad you're a doubting Thomas as opposed to the other Tom. Mike, I agree with you that what happens in this final season, 17 games to go in this lead up season into what's typically considered the second season. The perception from afar, why should Tampa give a shit what Leaf fans think about their 3-4-3 run over the past 10? But within Tampa's culture, within their fan base, there's got to be cause for concern here, right? Like, is this team, will it be healthy enough? Will it be revved up enough? Will it be poised enough and positioned enough to do what it typically does? And from Maple Leafs perspective, these 17 games in your lead up season, Mike, are important, because it's about experimentation. It's about getting guys healthy. It's about getting guys in the right frame of mind with that determination to go barreling into the playoffs. So what happens between now and game 82 is important, Mike. It's very important. Last word to you.
Well, I think one sort of not underreported, but one factor that was not recognized too much last night was sort of the ornery nature of Austin Matthews against Connor McDavid. And, Austin Matthews is a big kid. He's a strong player. Mm-hmm. He has devoted himself this year more to the two-way game.
Right. And that's great.
And last night, he was physical with Connor McDavid, somebody he's actually friendly with in the offseason. So that is something that against Tampa, against Stamkos, against Braden Point, against Anthony Cirelli, you need that big body of Austin Matthews to impose his will and fight through. And last night, if you see what he did against McDavid, I think that's a good sign that, he shows up when he hasn't in the past in the playoffs.
Well, self-preservation isn't about just smiling when somebody's ripping off your $10,000 gold chain and punching you in the back of the head. That's not self-preservation. It's taking it to your opposition, right? And again, it's not so much, well, now I'm pissed off and here I come with reckless abandon because you break a knuckle. But just to, like, he's evolved his game. But again, the big guy, the big target, like other players have been able to succeed in that role, being more physical, just to protect themselves and to say, "I'm here, man. I mean, I've evolved." So self-preservation isn't about dancing away from trouble. It's about standing up to trouble. And we saw last night Austin Matthews with 8 shots. Okay, 2 points. The debate over who's better is moot because it doesn't matter. But really, we all know there's no debate. I mean, what Connor McDavid is doing right now, he's really one of the best players in the history of hockey. Like I'm sorry, whether he's wearing an Oilers jersey or he's from Toronto or you've got some issues with him about his defensive game, just what he brings, I mean, he's a throwback and he's a future player, right? So forget about it. But Austin Matthews, in his own right, is just a magical offensive talent who has evolved his game into something that can be considered responsible and favorable in all 3 zones of the ice. So he's doing a really, really nice job. But again, self-preservation isn't just about avoiding trouble. It's about being able to mitigate trouble and being there to step up to it when the time comes without losing your mind because all you're doing is reacting to something, right? So, yeah, last night's game was fun to watch. It really was. There were some leafy moments and some things that this team has to look at in the video room. But man, that fourth period was phenomenal. Really charged up by number 16, who again continues to just be a complete spark plug for this team. And you even saw in the dying minutes, Mitch Marner breaking up passes, playing defensive hockey. It's just damn treat to watch. Just looking at the lineup, guys, as we've talked about on paper. On paper, this Leafs team is among the top 10, maybe top 5, some nights top 3 in the league on paper. But it's about putting, all of that, all of those points and all of that promise um, into practice and with purpose. So we shall see over the next 17 games leading up into the second season. The Mike Augello warm-up campaign as we push into the playoffs. Like the content, subscribe to the channel, let your friends know about what we are doing. You can reach out to me in the community portion of the YouTube page, youtube.com/Leafs Convo. Got any comments, concerns, you can do that. You know where my email is. Hit me up there. And we're both on social media. Mike more so, and Mike doing amazing work at hockeybuzz.com. Mike, before we leave, what's your latest column about? I know you were talking about the goalies not too long ago. Is there anything new?
Well, today will just be the combo and off the post radio talking more about the Flyers upheaval, the firing of Chuck Fletcher in Philadelphia. I probably will write tomorrow about, and I wrote earlier in the week about the goaltending situation. Joseph Woll is going to be on the Maple Leafs next year. I'm fairly convinced of that. He's last night he beats Hartford. The Marlies beat Hartford. He's now 16-1. He's healthy. He's playing really well. He's played well at the NHL level in a couple games this year. He's under contract for 2 more years at less than $800,000. I have a feeling that Matt Murray might be a one and done, or Ilya Samsonov might be a one and done. One of the situations here, just simply because of money, because the Leafs, if they want to re-sign Ryan O'Reilly, if they want to re-sign the guys, they're going to have to save money in other areas. And one of the areas might be goaltending, where Murray is scheduled to make like $4.6 million next year. They might buy him out, which won't cost them a lot, and go with Woll as one of the 2 goaltenders. So that bears watching. I mean, I will be tracking the Marlies over the next few weeks and going into the Calder Cup playoffs. And if Joseph Woll has a long run in the Calder Cup playoffs, I think you can rest assured he's going to be on the Leafs roster next year.
And hey, with all of the guys who are here in the now, you think of the Matthew Nyes, the Connor Timmins, the Joseph Walls. There are kids not only coming up but making their presence felt right now, indicating of things to come. So that's really exciting. Last point, last night watching the Leafs game and hearing, some of the analysts talk about problems in other markets, and you just brought up Philadelphia. It there are still scars within me from all of the years of the Leafs being one of those shitty teams, trying to avoid getting sucked into the toilet bowl, right? Fighting off mediocrity in order to gain some kind of respectability. It is amazing how far we've come, Mike. And when we complain and we really dissect a team that some people think is unfair, it's not because we feel like this team is garbage. It's not like we feel this team is nowhere near the promised land. It's like we've been at this second stage so long, coming out of all of that shit. How can this team, while it has the components, get to where we all want it to get to, and do what other teams who have built in a similar way have been able to achieve, right? So that's the thing. I'm very thankful. We're not the Canucks. I'm very thankful that this is not the Flyers or Columbus or Chicago or Anaheim or Arizona. So again, gratitude is extremely important. And in this moment, after that win, I'm feeling pretty good. What'll happen against Buffalo and beyond? Um, I'm keeping my fingers crossed and being quietly optimistic that there's going to be more of the same as we lead into the second season in this Mike Augello warm-up campaign, getting prepped for what is going to be potentially the most important playoff encounter that the Leafs have had in decades. So, Mike, have fun with your other podcast. Thanks for all you do on HockeyBuzz.com, and of course, right here on the Leafs Convo, OGs Converts. We may do a sneak show. We did one a few days ago, and we may do the same in a few days' time. So for Mike, I'm Norm. Talk to you soon.